Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. Well, let's talk about Backwards Day. Backwards Day and Chasing Rainbows. And guys, I gotta tell you, these episodes, they're not as bad as you think. They're not as bad as you think. You may think they're pretty bad if you don't like All Engines Go. But I find All Engines Go to be entertaining. And two, I think that there's a lot that we could talk about. A lot we could talk about these episodes. And I want to go ahead and share a bit about what I think. So first off, we'll start with Backwards Day. Backwards Day is the episode 14 of the first season of All Engines Go. Welcome in, welcome in. And it is a story, essentially, where there is this day where the engines can all move backwards, right? Like, look at Kana here. Look, see, moving backward. So all these engines get to move backwards. They do things backwards. They say things backwards. If I say go left, you're supposed to go right, right? Kind of thing here. And it's quite interesting, right? It's an interesting concept, right? And everything. You think the episodes, Tank Engine, are mid? Not bad, but not good? They're interesting. They're very interesting episodes. One of the things about Backwards Day, of course, is it's a confusion that it causes, right? If I say, hey, I need you to go and do this thing, you might think, oh, that person is saying, Kevin's saying, don't go and do this thing. And that's the trouble right here with that Gordon is experiencing right here. Gordon is saying, hey, you've got to take the cows to the farm and you got to take the sailboat to the bay, right? But Gordon's like, it's,
Right, I will try it.
Backwards Day, right? He doesn't like Backwards Day, right? And so Thomas and Percy, they end up getting a little confused on what they need to do because they think it's backwards, right? Here, I think this is what it is.
It must mean I should do my delivery backwards and take the cows to the seaside and the sailboat to the farm.
Yep, and Percy's like, that doesn't quite make sense. And then he says, oh wait, that does make sense. And so that's the entire premise. That's the entire premise of the episode, right? Where they take the cows to the bay, and all these cows, right, which is where the sailboat should be, and the sailboat gets delivered all the way over to the farm, which is backwards. And of course, that's not right. That's not right. And then Gordon gets upset. He says, no, you're not supposed to do it.
Knock over a tree.
Yeah, he's just all upset. They also knock over a tree, by the way. That's crazy. We'll talk about that in a second later. But what we're saying here is in my opinion, that's the most frustrating part of this entire episode, is that Thomas and Percy, because they're trying to do Backwards Day, they get their instructions wrong. Nobody's able to communicate clearly with them on what they need to do, and they end up having this whole mess where they have to go and redo everything by making their deliveries. Now, generally speaking, on a railroad, you don't have a lot of leeway, right, with time, right? As soon as you're supposed to make a delivery, you probably have something else you need to do, or you need to go under maintenance, or you need to rest, right? There's not to mention other engines, other trains that are going to be on the tracks, preventing you from making deliveries because you're going to be interfering with their schedule. You're going to be in their way, right? So, hello to all our friends there, Slimdevin and Dragon, but in All Engines Go, I think the engines have a lot more free time. At least that's what it seems like. It does seem like free time. They do have jobs, right? They do have things to do, right? Thomas does need to make these deliveries, but it does seem as if they have a little bit more free time to do the things that they want to do, so they can go and fix these issues. But generally speaking, yeah, no, on an actual railway, I don't think this would cut it. Somebody would get in trouble, right? Or as Sir Topham Hatt would say, confusion and delay. This is confusion and delay. So yeah, but yeah, hey, they managed to fix it. They got the cows to the farm. It's nighttime, and then they pretty much are falling asleep at the end there.
Good morning, Thomas. Good morning, Percy.
They say good night because it's Backwards Day.
Backwards Day.
So, a little bit crazy, but I think that's one of the things that I really don't like about this episode. I don't think that's a lesson, by the way. The lesson is not, hey, Backwards Day is fine. I think that's a bad lesson to take away from this. Obviously, the miscommunication is a problem, and clear communication is very important in life, both when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, when you're an adult. In all aspects, clear communication, conveying what you mean across, and then more importantly, understanding what someone else is saying to you is critical. Is critical because if you don't understand what they're saying, you could bad things could happen. I mean, it doesn't necessarily even have to do with like stuff that might be critical. Like say if you're flying a plane and then like the air traffic controller tells you something wrong, that could be really bad, right? But even like if you're driving a car somewhere and you get the wrong directions, you end up at the wrong house, that's frustrating, you know? If your teacher gives you a homework assignment and says you need to read chapter 3, right, but you don't hear them right and you read chapter 4 instead, that's frustrating. It's frustrating for the teacher, it's frustrating for you, it's frustrating for everyone. So in my opinion, and I don't know if I necessarily like this lesson or like the concept, but I almost would have said like, you know, hey, this was a fun game, this was a fun idea, but maybe in the future for Backwards Day, we don't do Backwards Day in terms of whenever it comes to doing a job. We're doing a delivery because it ends up being problematic, or at the very least not doing it in regards to what you're saying, right? Maybe you could still drive backwards, which I'm not saying is the safest thing, but it is, you know, oh, and just go, this is a cartoon. These engines can crash all over the place. They could go, they could do stuff like that, and they're still feeling fine. But in terms of communication, in terms of just saying, hey, when we talk to each other about a job, we're just going to say it straightforward. We're not going to say it backwards. We're going to just tell you how it is, and then you just do it, right? You could deliver it backwards, but make sure you understand first what the objective is, what the mission is, what the job is. So yeah, so I feel like that's a reasonable statement. The real lesson of this episode, and you guys can correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that Gordon is saying, hey, take things very seriously, right? Make sure you do your job, right? You know.
Why aren't you doing Backwards Day? Don't
Right.
you think it's fun?
Because he thinks that, you know, Backwards Day is silly and pointless, right? But he says you should take it seriously. What Thomas and Percy are trying to convey here, and I think this is a lesson up the episode, is you can do your job, you can get work done, and it can also be fun. Right, you could play a game that could allow you to get your work done. Right, it's sort of a way of making things that you don't like doing into something you like doing. It's a productivity tip, for example, and then it's honestly, I think that's a good productivity tip. If you are having to do something like vacuum, you know, maybe you don't like vacuuming, right? You know, that's kind of boring, right? It's tedious, it's a chore, but maybe you can make it a game, right? Maybe you could say like if you vacuum the entire floor of this room, you get a point. And if you vacuum a second room, you get 2 points. And you're supposed to collect as many points as possible. Then you start making it into a game. You start making it fun. And if something is fun, then it's not as tedious to do. And I think that's what they're trying to say here. That's what they're trying to say. They're saying, hey, Thomas say like, hey, you know what? We want to make this a fun game. We want to have fun with everyone. And we don't want to deal with, like, you know, the fact that, like, you know, we could do our job, but we could also enjoy ourselves. And I think that's the lesson that they're trying to convey here is like, you can make jobs fun. So I think that's a worthwhile lesson. I'm not sure if it's not conveyed in the best way. And obviously Backwards Day causes some issues, but I think that's a decent lesson. I think communication might have been the better clear communication would have been the better lesson. And that could have been that, but that's not really kind of conveyed at the end of this episode. So yeah, Thomas stories to me are full of just life lessons, honestly, and I love that. The one thing that I'm really frustrated about this episode, I wouldn't say I'm really frustrated, but I think it's absolutely quite silly, is and by the way, I do errors, you know, about these episodes. So if you guys ever like trying to like, you know, you want to know about all the errors or the goose of the episodes, I do have videos that I release on each of these episodes on all the goofs and sins and mistakes that they've made. And there's a specific video about that. But I'm just going to talk about this one in particular. This is just crazy. Look at this. Thomas basically grabs the tree, right, by backing backwards, because of course he's backwards.
Now for the switch.
And then he does this crazy thing with the switch here. He's trying to use the tree on the switch. So he puts the trees down. Bounce, bounce, bounce. The tree's flying in the air. And then lands. This is actually the original spot that the tree came from. The tree originally was knocked over by Percy at this location, then it suddenly ends up back at the same place. And to me, it's sort of like, it's cartoonish. It's cartoonish. Yes, I know, we're watching a cartoon, but it's kind of a silly thing, right? To just have a tree just kind of bounce over the place. One, I think the tree probably should have fallen off. It can't, you really can't move it like that without it falling off the tracks. But two, that tree probably would have been destroyed. I mean, wood is pretty strong. Wood's pretty strong, but like given the forces that would be needed to just bounce it all over the place, I really think that certain portions of it would have shattered at that point, or more logically wouldn't have jumped around like that at all. Yeah. Tree should have been broken after Percy rammed into it. Yeah, it's just a little silly. It's just a little silly. There's a lot of silly things that do happen, and I understand that Thomas is not exactly supposed to be the most like accurate, like realistic depiction, right? Thomas the Tank Engine from episode 1 of the model series has a face. Most engines don't have faces or talk to you, for example. So I understand that there's not there's a little bit of a stretch of imagination that even pure original Thomas fans have, but All Engines Goes kind of does take it to a little bit more of an extreme level because of the cartoon physics, because of the depiction, right? And some might argue saying like All Engines Go is designed for a young audience. I would say that Thomas has always been something that could appeal to audiences of all ages, but All Engines Go may not necessarily take that into account. It's a fun show, and the background music is amazing, but Backwards Day can be a little bit of crazy story here. Let's move on to the next one though. Chasing Rainbows. I don't know if you guys have watched Chasing Rainbows. That is episode 15. The next episode. It is a fun episode.
Here comes Tommy.
Here, let's just go ahead and so in this episode, it's a pretty straightforward. It's literally chasing rainbows, right? Kana and Thomas spot a rainbow, and they want to reach the end of the rainbow. Which, I don't know about you, but I think as a child, I always was like, oh yeah, what is at the end of the rainbow? I've always heard that there was gold, like leprechaun gold at the end of the rainbow, like a pot of gold, and that no matter how far you move towards a rainbow, it's always just far away and distant. And then of course that's just how physics works, right? The way that light is reflected and refracted in order to create a rainbow leads to the fact that you will never be able to reach the end of the rainbow, right? It simply is impossible because whenever you reach a location, the way the sun shines through the humidity in the air causes the rainbow to move further away it is. So there's no way to reach the end of the rainbow. Unfortunately, of course, that doesn't actually, apply in cartoons, and they literally do reach the end of the rainbow. So, by the way, that's a sin. That's definitely going to be a sin that appears in the next episode to be released. But this is, I'm not sure if there's a lesson in this episode. I was thinking about it, and most of these episodes in All Engines Go have some sort of lesson, have something that like they talk about, or the engines are trying to overcome adversity or perseverance. To me, this is a lore building. This is a lore building episode because it introduces a new location. It introduces this mountain here. This is Lookout Mountain. That's what they name it, right? I don't think they knew about it before. Which is kind of interesting because there's clearly tracks that go around this mountain. And if it's a mountain, it's pretty high up there, right? So it probably should be fairly noticeable on the Isle of Sodor because it sticks up. It sticks up out of the ground. But perhaps, I sometimes with All Engines Go, I do give a little bit of leeway. The tracks around it are clearly old, right? They haven't been used in a while. The tracks going up the mountain are busted. It's so much so that they had to bring in Carly and Sandy to fix the tracks to go up the mountain. So it's very possible that the routes around this area just aren't used, right? And there may be tracks here, but nobody tends to travel around this area. And so if you're not traveling on the area, maybe you wouldn't necessarily see the mountain, right? Farther away you get, the trees could block your view, hills could block your view. It's just a matter of visibility. So I do give it a little bit of leeway, although I would think that this mountain would have been known before. But apparently they found this mountain, they're looking around it, and then they say, you know what, this is a great place. We love this place. You can see everything around here. You can see the entire scenery, right? It's and they say we're going to make this as our base for the biggest adventure club, right? The biggest adventure club, which is their group there, and they bring everyone together, right? They have Thomas, they have Kana, Percy, Nia, Sandy, and Carly, right? They have the 6 main engines of the club, the six main characters, you might even say, of All Engines Go. I don't know if you count Gordon as a main character. I see Gordon in All Engines Go as the sort of parental figure, which to me is kind of silly because I never considered Gordon really a parental figure in the original Thomas. He's certainly a serious engine, right? But I don't think him as the most caring individual. If I were to cast the parental figure for All Engines Go, I put Edward in there. Edward nonstop, because Edward is kind. Did I forget Diesel? And Diesel is part of there too. Is that 6? 7 cars, seven engines. My apologies, I can't forget Diesel. Well, to be fair, I never liked Diesel because he was such a jerk in the model series. I was like, nobody likes Diesel, right? Even in Bullet Train, the movie, they say don't be a Diesel, right? If you're Diesel, you're conniving, you're lying, person. So even Diesel has like a bad reputation, right? Edward makes the most sense. Edward makes the most sense as a parental figure. He's kind. He is an older engine, right? Even in the model series, we already established he's an older engine. Based on how he looks in All Engines Go, he's a big engine. I mean, Gordon's not in this episode, but all of these, that's a I don't know what Thomas is doing there. But in all of these episodes, all these other engines, Thomas and Kana and Percy, Nia, they're relatively small compared to the older engines or the adult engines, right? Gordon, Edward, Emily, right, are all significantly bigger than the main cast. And that's supposed to sort of represent that these are kids or these, young teenagers. And then the bigger engines are the adults. And Sandy apparently is supposed to be like younger than all of them, and that's why Sandy is so tiny. Where's Sandy? Like, see how Sandy is like a lot smaller than Carly, right? It's because Sandy's supposed to be extremely young. So that's just how it is. That's just how it is, with All Engines Go depictions. But yeah, I would have cast Edward instead of Gordon. But it's a lore building. This is lore building. This is saying, hey, you know what? We're giving a base, a location that all of these engines, all 7 of these engines of the biggest adventure club can have and gather for, and maybe we'll utilize it in the future. And I don't think, yeah, Mickey, we're here. I don't think that is a bad idea. I don't think that's a bad thing. Lore building is great. Lore building is how we got the original Thomas, right? You wouldn't have heard about Vigorousstown without lore building. You wouldn't have heard about, Henry's Forest without lore building. Lore building is critical to establishing potential stories in the future, right? Because now that they have this location, this spot, they could do something with it. They could utilize it. And they actually do utilize this area shortly thereafter in Nia's Balloon Blunder. For I wouldn't say it's the most amazing usage of this location, but it is nice that that it comes back, right? You don't create something and you forget it. And honestly, that makes sense from a financial point of view, because remember, you have a bunch of artists here. You have a bunch of artists. You have a bunch of computer designers who've built this entire piece, this set piece, right? All of these elements here that they want to be used, right? And it takes time, it takes money, and an effort to put this all together. So if you're going to put something together, you might as well use it over and over and over again. That's why I think we constantly see the same engines over and over again. Like James appears in like every episode, like for like 5, 6, 7 episodes in a row, something like that, because they made a James model. Right, they're not going to go ahead and then spend more money to make a Henry model or they have a Henry model or an Oliver model. No, they're going to just keep using James over and over again because it's cheaper. And And these companies are in it to make money. I know. We say like, oh, we'd rather have it for the art or the story and everything. But the companies are here to make money, so they're not going to spend more than they necessarily need to. And that's fine. We like James. But if they're going to make this art asset, then they're going to use it over and over again. I think the other reason why they did it is that potentially, and I'm not sure if this was in the discussion at the time that they were planning it, but maybe Mystery of Lookout Mountain, to expand on the location later, but maybe they were also planning to sell toys. Because Mattel is a toy company, right? So maybe when they were discussing and laying out the blueprints, the blue board, the storyboards, they were storyboarding it, and they were trying to welcome in to figure out where what we're trying to do. They're saying like, hey, you know what? We can develop this great, amazing mountain concept. We're going to sell toys. We're gonna sell toys on this, right? We're gonna have tracks that go around. You could sell this bridge here, this station, this lookout section at the top, right? Sell the toys and make money off of it, because people say like, oh, Lookout Mountain, I want my Thomas train, whichever toy version you have to have Lookout Mountain, so that I could have Thomas and Percy and Nia and everyone go on to Lookout Mountain just like I see in the episode. And let's be honest, that makes perfect sense. When I was growing up as a kid, there was an episode where they were crossing a bridge and the bridge was out. The bridge was out. It was crumbling beneath them, and I didn't have that bridge toy personally, but I would use Scotch tape. I would use Scotch tape to sort of make tracks that would wobble, that wasn't quite secure, so that to replicate the episode, because I was taking the episode from Model Thomas, and I was playing with it with my Brio trains, with my Thomas wooden railway set, right? Just copying it to the best of my ability, scene by scene. And even though I didn't necessarily have the same sets or models and everything that was in the to replicate the episode, I would improvise. Well, kids want to do that. And if they sell Lookout Mountain to kids and then use Lookout Mountain multiple times in multiple episodes, well, kids are going to try to replicate it. They're going to do the same things with their toys, and so they're going to want to buy it. They want to tell their parents to buy it, and parents will be like, okay, sure, we'll buy it for you. Not everyone will. Not everyone will buy it, but I'm sure a certain portion of people do. Now, whether or not that actually happened, where people actually bought toys based on Lookout Mountain, I don't necessarily know. But I think that when you're discussing this, when you're planning this out, you think, okay, yeah, we can maybe sell toys about this, or at the very least, it sells more track. Maybe people don't want to buy the whole Lookout Mountain because that's so expensive, but maybe they want to buy this bridge, right? This bridge piece, right? That's reasonable. I mean, it's a beautiful. I mean, also, it's even if you don't buy anything without regards to Lookout Mountain, it's still depicting trains and engines, in a way that makes people want to buy it, right? I don't know if the Thomas television series is profitable in its own right. Right? I don't know if the cost it takes to produce these TV series takes is less than the value they get by selling the rights to share aired on Netflix or commercials or whatever. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to Mattel, because Mattel's profit line comes from its merchandise and its brand deals with other companies. So as long as all of that is profitable, then they could take a loss on the animated series. And the animated series is basically just a giant commercial for the Thomas product line. Now it's a commercial that we find entertaining. It's a commercial with story and heart. It's a commercial based on the original books by Reverend Aldrey. But, and of course, we love the model series. But, Mattel has, converted over to a way to make money by selling toys. And there's nothing against it. It's mutually beneficial. Mattel makes money, I get to watch a show, we get to watch a show, and we even have products, we even have toys that we can play with based on Thomas. Right? I love the fact that I can continue to play with my railroad sets, with my Thomas railroad sets with my nephews. I love the fact that they have here, by the way, in the United States, something called a day out with Thomas. I don't know if they also have that in the UK. I suspect they do. But in the United States, they have something called an event called Day Out with Thomas, where you can go to a certain location, you could board these passenger cars, and Thomas and Percy are there to pull and push the train along the tracks, and you're basically riding with Thomas. And then there's other activities related to Thomas the Tank Engine, but that's something that costs money. That's something that people are willing to buy and purchase and experience because we all love Thomas the Tank Engine. But we don't necessarily love it if we didn't have the TV series, right? We wouldn't have known about it. So it's a good commercial franchise. And honestly, it's a good thing that Mattel makes money on Thomas. It's an excellent thing that Mattel makes money on Thomas, because if Mattel did not make any money on Thomas, Mattel would not have a Thomas TV series. Mattel would not release any toys. There would be nothing. The only thing that would exist for Thomas would be stuff that we'd make as fans, right? And we make a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of great stories out there about Thomas, a lot of great videos out there. But it's nice that there's also something official with high quality that exists out there because Mattel is able to make money. So I am grateful for that. I'd rather there to be a Thomas television series every year and Mattel makes money off of us than nothing. They do have a Day Out with Thomas event in UK. That's great. I didn't know that, but that's good. I love that. So that's good. There's definitely a lot of errors in the episode, and I am concerned that they are starting to make take more and more more and more fact that they don't need to follow the laws of physics because it's a cartoon. But I mean, look at this.
Hey, don't fast track without me or me.
See how they're leaping in the air? I've seen that more and more recently with some of the late episodes after this, and I'm starting to get concerned that maybe they're realizing we don't necessarily have to follow the rules of what an engine or what a train can do. We could just make them do whatever they want, and I'm like, that's not quite right. You can do both. You can have a great story about Thomas and his friends while also following the laws of physics. In fact, I would argue that the stories that we see in real life today do both, right? the real life stories of engines that were the basis of the books were real events with heart and story, and they also followed the laws of physics because they actually happened. So I know that's a constriction, that's a restraint on the animators, and they may not necessarily want to do that because they want to depict these engines in a more fun and vibrant method. But we've been depicting Thomas and friends in the CGI series for more physically possible for years, for decades, and it hasn't been too much of an issue, I think. So I think that's definitely possible, but I know that I worry that it's going to get. I worry that all of these errors, these things are going to get worse over time, right? And then it's just going to be crazy, in final episodes. So we'll see. But it's a nice story. I don't think there's a lesson. All of these engines are trying to find. They're trying to speculate what treasure lies at the end of the rainbow, and each of them has something that they might like. Sandy was looking for sand, and then Thomas is like, oh, the real treasure is the fact that we get this mountain and that we can share, we can all share together, right? This is our chance for us to all have a treasure that we all like together. And I guess that's kind of maybe a lesson, possibly, where it's saying hey, you know what, the true lesson is friendship, or the true lesson is it's something that we all can enjoy together. Maybe. I mean, I don't think. I mean, that's sort of a hammered in kind of lesson, because if they didn't find Lookout Mountain, if they did find some random treasure at the end of the rainbow, it wouldn't have gone that way. It's nice that they all can appreciate it, but maybe not. But that's just that's how they wrote the story. I don't think I would have depicted it as the treasure as being something they could all share. I think I would have depicted the treasure as friendship. I mean, I know some people have an overused, say that's an overused idea. I don't think so. I think friendship is important. In life, we're human, and we seek out human connection. We seek out human connection initially with our parents, because we're born to them. We're with our family, with our siblings, with our aunts and uncles and grandparents, and then as we grow older, we seek out connection with those around us. We seek out friends. We seek out people that we can bond with, that we care about, that we can share interests with, and possibly, love, and not necessarily romantic love, but love as friends do, best friends, as people that would be there and back you up no matter what, right? We're always searching for that connection, right? And I think that's the lesson I would have pushed with this episode, saying, hey, you know what? The treasure wasn't this mountain's a great treasure, but the real treasure was that, hey, we came together. We came together on this adventure. We worked together. We struggled hard, and we all enjoy each other's company. And I think that's important. That's a wonderful thing to acknowledge. That's an amazing thing to say, right? Literally, the franchise is called Thomas and Friends. Friends is part of the title. So I think friendship would have been a very good lesson that I would have pushed a little bit harder in this episode. But I think it's fine. It's a fine lesson. I like the lore building. And I think that friendship... Oh, what's going on there? Ooh, yeah, that's a funny picture of Thomas. That's when Comet goes by and whooshes. It's the whoosh section right here.
Idea! Let's fast track this!
And then she whooshes. Yep, and then Thomas goes crazy. Yeah, friendship, lore building. It's good. Lore building is good. Friendship is good. It's a cute episode. And I'm not saying... And you know what? These episodes are only 10 minutes long. They're like 11 minutes, 10 minutes long. So the fact that they're able to fit in so much in a short period of time has always been a strength of Thomas and Friends. If you go back to, the beginning, right? They've had 5-minute episodes, right? And now they have 10-minute episodes. So the fact that they're able to put in so much in such a short period of time, it's great. I love it. Sure, you're not able to do everything that you might want. As in a 30-minute episode, but the fact that you could do a lot in 10, it's a good lesson in efficiency. It's a good lesson in how to make things work really well. Sometimes I will write. When I was younger, I would write essays, and if I didn't have a lot of time, I would write longer. But if I had a lot more time, I could write shorter, because then I could cut out all the junk, all the fluff, all the stuff that wasn't important for an episode. So I think it's nice that they are able to put everything together in a short period of time. But don't worry, guys. I'm gonna be covering this with goofs, with sins, right? I'll be covering all the mistakes in an episode, which I will release as a video and count it for you. In fact, I believe I've already edited it. It's pretty interesting, and so I think that will come out Monday or something. Here's an interesting thing about this that I probably didn't mention as a goof, but here I probably should have mentioned it, and you guys are gonna get it. You guys are gonna get right here. Like, this is one that I've missed. This is literally one that I've missed. Let me see if I can find that section of it. Because I did not realize this. Okay, yeah, here it is. Notice that there's water here. There's water here that falls down in a waterfall. Where's the water coming from? This pond, and I'm going to call it a pond, is not that big. It's not that big, right? And this waterfall is huge. So the amount of water that's draining out of this pond is massive, right? And then at some point, the waterfall's going to disappear. Now, you could say, Kevin, there's a rainbow. Clearly, it rained. In fact, in the beginning of the episode, it rained. So this pond is fuller than it should be. So maybe that's the excess water just pouring out. But I have a feeling that this rainbow, this waterfall doesn't go away. Even after it's been dry, sunny for quite a bit, and that this is just an infinite source of water here. And the only water source that I see that it could get is rain. I suppose it could possibly be that because there's a structure here, there's a building here, maybe there's a pipe that's burst and that's filling up the pond, and then the pond is, the water's draining out somewhere. But if that were the case, logically speaking, someone would notice that there's water just being randomly diverted to this place and just being wasted, and they would shut it off. But, this is a cartoon. It doesn't necessarily need serious logic. But no, these are nice episodes. I think friendship is a good lesson here. I like the lore building, and I think that's amazing. I'm always excited to see it when the Indians interact with each other, even if sometimes it's a little crazy and they do crazy things like that. But hey, let me know if I'm wrong. Maybe you guys think that this is a terrible episode. Maybe you thought that Backwards Day was a bad episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions. I'm glad that we could have kind of these discussions and analysis on Thomas. I'm glad we have Thomas. There are a lot of franchises out there, where they know they don't have a show, they don't have anything official being created, and they just have to make do with fan content. And fan content's great, but sometimes it's nice to have a company really push something officially and say, hey, you know what? We still support the fandom. We're going to, Mattel's going to release a new series in 2026. Potentially we'll get a movie in the next few years. Potentially live action. That's what I think. And I think that's awesome. More Thomas for everyone. I'm fine with that. I think we're all fine with that. Take care, guys. Have a good night. I'll see you later. And of course, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.